Mr. Chair, I make the motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Need a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Old business, there is none. New business, item number 1 is to review the plat for Douglas Meadows Phase 2. I think Neil, you want to come say it?
Sure. This is Douglas Meadows Unit 2. The first unit was done, I'm going to say a couple of years ago. We went through the police jury, it was constructed, most of the homes are built in there, maybe all of them on that first phase are finished. Maybe have a couple in it. And this is the extension of those roads for Phase 2. We planned that at the onset, and just wanted to make sure that the demand was what we thought it was going to be, and it is. So we want to go ahead and extend that infrastructure now. We submitted to the water system and Department of Health, as well as DEQ for our stormwater construction permit to be dirt on properties larger than 5 acres. So with your approval, we'll start some work.
So have been any issues on the roads or drainage for Unit 1?
No, I don't know of any. No. We've had pretty good rains since this thing was finished, and a lot of grass established. Most of the yards that people are in are fully sodded, so it's able to handle it.
Okay.
Is that open ditch, Neil?
It's curved good.
It is curvy good, that's what I was
And the next phase will be curved good.
thinking. That's helpful.
That really makes it look good.
Yeah.
It makes it really easy to build in and maintain. So it's also a sewer system. This is a sewer treatment plant, so we have smaller lots. All that's been approved by DEQ and DHH on the first phase. So this will be, we won't have to do any upgrades on the sewer treatment plant to accommodate these additional houses.
Everything's underground in our city too, as far as utilities.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So, are there going to be any road cuts for all the utilities behind?
All the utilities, there won't be any cuts on the existing roads that are built in there.
Or the new roads
The-
after they're built?
No, all the water services will be run prior to the road being complete. Sewer services as well.
Before the base is set up?
That's right.
Thank y'all for doing that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That makes a difference down the road with our highway department.
Anytime we know how many lots are going to be in there, we like to go ahead and put those services in and be done.
Any other questions?
Has Paul reviewed the plat yet?
Yes,
Okay.
and there were a few minor modifications made. They've made all of those, and I'll just say we've had, to my knowledge, no issues in this subdivision at all. I think it was done very well up front, the only thing that I can see going forward that just needs to kind of be in our minds is that as we build these subdivisions with curb and gutter features, which I think is not a bad thing, I think it's a good thing. The one piece of equipment that we don't possess ourselves is a vacuum truck for when the catch basins, silt in and things of that nature. We have another subdivision where we had that occur. I will say that it does not have the good drainage and the good engineering this one does. We worked with the city of Ruston. They came out and helped us with that, and so we'll try to continue that relationship in the future for those kind of services.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to approve the Douglas Meadows Phase 2?
No motion is necessary, Mr. Chairman. This is just for your review.
Oh, it's just for the review?
Correct.
It's not approved. Perfect. All right, item number 2, capital improvement program revision, the detention center parking lot.
So during the expansion of the detention center, the building of the new dormitory, the parking lot of the detention center got a lot of abuse from the heavy equipment and trucks coming in there. Parking lot was aging and really needed some work to begin with, but after all of this heavy construction equipment, it really has a considerable amount of wear and tear, some large potholes, and just really is in very, very poor condition at this point. And so the two bridges that we bid out in the recent past, those bids have come in. We'll see those bids in the regular jury meeting, but those bids came in considerably under budget, and we will have a considerable excess in this capital improvement budget for this year, and it would be plenty to overlay this parking lot and do the improvements that are necessary. You see in item 2 of your packet there, the estimate for doing that. That includes some concrete in certain areas and then the asphalt and the rest of it. And so it's our recommendation that we use the excess budget to go ahead and complete this so that they'll have the new parking lot to go along with the new building. And this is the entire parking lot, by the way, for the entire detention center, not just for the dorm.
That's what I was gonna ask, that included the entire.
The entire
parking lot
thing.
Out there, which would be best.
Correct.
Get it out.
And it's time.
I have a question. I understand that it's time to do this, but just in case it wasn't time, do we have anything in place that would require, as with the oil companies, that they contribute to the repair of any damages that they've done? Is that possible?
I don't know if it's possible, and I will tell you my thoughts, I give you my opinion. I think if you tried to go and get a contractor to pay for damages in the normal function of their performing their jobs, it'd be very difficult to get a contractor to ever do work for you ever in the future. Because I think it's just, typically what would happen, and I'll use Mr. DeForest in the subdivision as an example, they're going to try to go in there and do all of their heavy work before the streets are laid because they know their equipment is going to tear up the asphalt. In this case, they didn't have an option. The parking lot was there prior to the construction taking place. So, you know, they have to bring in the big trucks, they have to make road the asphalt, they don't really have an option. So it's just a natural course of work.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
I don't think the contractor had any idea. That was an existing park lot that had been there quite some time. He knew nothing about
30 years.
the base or how well it would hold up. And I don't think it'd been fair for him to be asked to pay for it.
Well,
So it
I
is-
understand, you know, like I said,
Yeah.
excluding
question.
this situation where the parking lot is not in good condition after all, so they have okay, satisfied with that answer.
Any other questions?
Yeah, is this to authorization to bid this or what, or where are we, what is this?
Yes.
You're asking for?
Yes, authorization to bid.
Because it has to.
No, Hunter, am I wrong about that? Where are we at on this?
No, we haven't started work on it yet.
Okay, this is just estimate. So this is authorization to allow us to do the engineering work on it too. And then we'll bring it back to you for bids. Thank you.
So you're asking for, include this in the capital outlay?
That's correct.
Modify the current capital outlay?
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we revise the capital improvement program to include the detention center parking lot.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second to improve or change the capital improvement plan. All in favor? Motion passed. Request for assistance, item number 3 is the student road repair.
You see in your packet, and for some reason the original email did not get put in here, but page 5, item 3 is a list of potholes in the city limits of Shudent there, and it's got some notations on it. This is work that the highway department has gone and assisted with in Shudent.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that are we through? You through, Mr. Marcel?
Yes, ma'am?
I make a motion that we assist Schubert in their request for road repair.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item number 4, Simsboro, adjudicated property, Highway 80 and Market Street.
Okay, this is item number 4 in your packet. This is a request from the mayor of Simsboro. There is an adjudicated property on the corner of Highway 80 and Martha Street, which is Highway 507, the one that comes in from the interstate. This is a former service station, and the building is deteriorating, and they're asking for us to come in and help remove the structure. Kevin and I have had conversations with several people about this issue. It's our understanding that with adjudicated property, we do not own the property. We possess the property, but we do not own the property. And because we do not own the property, we cannot go in and perform work on the property as is being requested. I have a recommendation on this for whatever it's worth. And that would be that we work with the village of Simsboro to take ownership of this property. We can give a donation to the village. And when they become the owners of the property, then they can request assistance for us for this work. I think that we can legally go about it the correct way then. But I don't think that we can do the work legally the way that's being requested currently.
Can I make a comment? I don't understand if we don't own it, how we can give it to somebody.
Well, we're the possessors according to the law, which means that we can legally transfer ownership from one owner to another, but we don't technically have legal ownership, if that makes any sense. I was hoping that Lewis would be here tonight to make a comment. He got held in felony court tonight and couldn't be here, but if nothing else, I would hope that you would just table this until he can come and give you a little further recommendation on this. But everyone we've talked to agrees with our assessment of this situation. Sure, I'm not in charge.
Well, he's the chairman. I'm not on the committee. So this is a safety issue. I don't know if any of you have seen it or not. The building's falling down. The canopy's falling down, and they're concerned about somebody getting hurt. And that's the reason for the request. It's not to improve the property or do anything like that. It's a safety issue. So the longer we put it off, the more storms we have, the more it's going to fall down.
So it would, so we're trying to get it in possession of the town of Simsboro, right? Is what the goal is.
That's my recommendation.
That's not what they were requesting. They just want.
No, that's not what they're requesting. They want help tearing the building down. I don't think that we can do that with the current ownership of the property. If the village themselves own the property and they requested assistance from us, then we could assist them. But we cannot go in and perform work on an adjudicated property because technically that property is still in private ownership. And we cannot legally do work on private property. That's illegal. It's kind of it's a very complicated legal area, adjudicated property, but
How old is this building?
How old is it?
Yeah.
Well, there was a service station when I was going to high school. James Russell Grove School was. I mean, it's old. It's not salvageable. It's falling down.
I'm just wondering, I mean, if there's anything in it as far as, I mean, if we did go through the process of tearing it down, we run a dozer through it, it's got asbestos all in it. I'm just wondering.
I believe that we had a similar, not exactly, a similar incident. I did a little homework on this in Grambling not too many years ago. On the corner of North Pine Tree and R.W. Jones. There was an old service station there. That property became adjudicated. There were some environmental issues there and they needed help. And in that case, what we ended up doing was donating that property to the city of Grambling, which allowed them to get assistance from DEQ to come in at some point, which I don't think they've done yet, to do the cleanup on that property. DEQ could not have done that if the property was still adjudicated.
Yeah. That's already been done on this part.
Has been done.
Yeah,
So that may
they
be-
come in and remove the tank from the last.
But Grant had possessed the property
They
before that
did
was done.
They did that, but without,
Question. Are we aware whether the tanks have been removed from that?
yes, they have in just the last few months. DEQ came in and removed
Which
it.
Okay,
property are we
good.
talking about, Simsboro or Graham?
Simple,
So DEQ removed the tanks from that location.
yes.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They did it and the property was in the same state of ownership.
If this is adjudicated property, we've sold a bunch of it, why don't we sell it? Why would we go through all this, we just put up for sale and let the new owners do something?
We can, if anyone's interested in purchasing it. We've got a lot of adjudicated property that sits out there waiting for someone that shows interest in purchasing it.
How big a lot is that? That's all.
Maybe no one has shown interest because they think the tanks are still there.
Absolutely. There's probably still, even if the state provided some sort of no further action in this, there's still some environmental liability associated with the property, I would assume.
Yeah, and with a building like it is, if they want it, they might go to expense to it. Because it's like a building, not selling.
I'll just say that we do not have a problem assisting the village of Simsbury in tearing down the building. We just want to make sure that we're legally in the right position to do that. My recommendation would be, if nothing else, that we table this until we can get a clear legal determination about that.
I'll make that motion that we table this until we have further legal counsel.
So,
Got a motion?
And I'll second that.
okay, can I ask a question? That means we gotta wait till next meeting, right?
Unless we call us special, I would assume, but, and we could probably do it in a special, public works meeting, couldn't we? Would it have to be approved by the entire jury?
Has to be approved by the entire jury.
It would.
I mean, you want,
Is Lewis gonna be available tonight before the,
I doubt it. He said that there was no end in sight.
yeah, I mean, we can't do anything once Lewis says, I mean, I agree with that. And once Lewis says, yes, that's correct. Any questions, probably not. So, you got a motion and a second, any more questions? All in favor? Motion's been tabled, or the item's been tabled until legal counsel. Item number 5, Diana, potholes in Florida Lease subdivision.
Yes, and I have an email that did not get printed in your packet because it just came through, but this is from Mayor Carpenter in Vienna, just requesting 2 or 3 potholes be filled in the Fleur de Lis subdivision, and I believe those have already been taken care of.
so moved.
Second.
Did I hear it? I'm not there.
Who was the second?
I'll second.
All right, here's a motion and a second to fill the potholes in the Florida Lease subdivision. All in favor? Aye. Item number 5 passed. Other business in Public Works. No other business. Meeting adjourned.
Yes.
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay. So I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Milton? Second by Teresa White. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Any public comments on any agenda items? Anybody have any public comments? No comments. If not, we'll move on to minutes of the prior meeting.
And you received a revised minute packet when you got here. Just has a few minor adjustments. And we'll have those available for the press if they need one.
I have a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Motion second. Second by Melton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Committee reports, Public Works Committee.
Yes, sir. The Public Works met at 6:30 this evening. We had no old business. New business was to review the plat for the Douglas Meadows Phase 2. No action necessary. We also approved, or recommended to move the detention center parking lot into the capital improvement program to start engineering. Item number 3 was request for assistance on road repair from Schubert that was recommended. And the item number 4, we are tabling for legal counsel to look at that to make sure what we can do. And item number 5, we're recommending. It's all the business from the Public Works. And I move to accept the report and approve recommendations from the Public Works.
Motion second that we accept and approve the recommendations of the Public Works Committee. Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, presentations on the watershed.
All right, we have Mr. Matt Johns here from Watershed Initiative Region 2 for a brief presentation.
Brief is noted. Mr. President, members of the jury, thank you so much for your time. I am Matt Johns with the Raccoon Area Planning Commission, Vice Chairman for Region 2 Watershed Initiative Steering Committee. That committee will dissolve at some point, and we're thinking this thing's going to become permanent. If you will take a look at the packet I handed out, it's a little something like this. You'll see the regions that we're talking about. Actually, you guys are split between Region 2 and 3. It actually runs right through the middle of Ruston here, so you guys are split evenly, or somewhat evenly. I'm going to give you a quick history, and I'm going to hit 6 points as fast as I can. I got about a 30-minute presentation. I'm trying to squeeze into 5 minutes, so I'll talk fast if you can listen fast. Quick history is that $1.2 billion of HUD funds were given to the state of Louisiana to try to combat major water flooding, handle some flood mitigation activities, and to also handle some water quality initiatives. This whole thing's been called the Louisiana Watershed Initiative. It was given to the state more money than usual because typically when we have a major storm like Hurricane Laura, you would just get an allocation from the state of hazard mitigation grant funds. You probably just got one recently. I'm not sure how much Lincoln Parish got, but you got that. Now you're going to, quote, apply for it by July and spend those funds as you see fit to try to fix those issues. The state said, well, we might be able to do a better job of that if we look at it from a watershed basis rather than from a political boundary standpoint. And that's the reason those boundaries look the way they do. They follow the Huck 8 watersheds. So it's really based on the geography where you've got ridges and all the water that flows in between those ridges is typically a watershed or a sub-basin. What we're looking at now with this $1.2 billion is how do we deal with it? And that is why we're here tonight to talk about the governance recommendations. These steering committees have been in place for about a year and a half. They are meant to go away, but before we do, we're supposed to make a recommendation to the state, which will become some type of legislation next year on what these new political entities are supposed to be. So imagine, if you will, a new political subdivision that's meant to handle these issues, and we're going to talk about what we think the roles and responsibilities should be. Now, this is supposed to be an opportunity for feedback, so if you really don't like something I'm saying, you can scoff at me and give me a thumbs down, scowl, or holler at me, or if you really like something, give me a smile, give me a thumbs up, or interrupt me and say, yeah, that's a good idea. We really want to know what you like and what you don't like, because we've got to tweak these things before they get back to the state. And I don't want to assume that I got it all right the first time, because I'm fairly certain that I did not. So here we go. First of the 6 points is these new political subdivisions on a regional level should handle the regulation and compliance procedures that go as part of the National Flood Insurance Program. Now, right now, that is probably handled by somebody that is a certified floodplain manager for the parish. Is that person in the room?
No.
Okay, you have somebody that does that, though,
Yes.
correct? So here's the trade-off. You don't have to pay for that anymore. If you like this idea, the new region would cover that for you. So you'd be giving up the cost of that locally, but you would also be giving up the final say authority of what you like and what you don't like with the National Flood Insurance Program. On the flip side, the coalition would have an appointee that you guys would have decided who that is. And so for this one, we're looking at somewhere between 12 and 15 members, and you guys would have a vote based on who you select to be on that coalition. So that is the very first one, and is actually the toughest and the most sticking that we have, and that is the incorporation or the rules and the enforcement of the National Flood Insurance Program, whether that's permitting, subdivision reviews, all of that stuff that goes as part of the NFIP could be handled by this regional coalition. So I'd like to get a little bit of a thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you like the idea of giving up the cost associated with that to this entity, but also giving up the authority with it?
One question.
Yes, sir.
So if that is a person that's on staff, do we charge part of his salary?
Would we charge you that?
No, I said, can we get reimbursed for part of his salary?
Not from this entity, as it stands right now. The idea is that the staff of this entity is going to be a conglomeration of the Sachi Delta and the Rapids Area Planning Commission that is governed by the coalition, of which you have an appointee, and then advised by a technical advisory committee made up of engineers, planners, folks that...
No, I misunderstood then. I thought you said whoever was administering our floodplain program, the cost could be charged to this.
Correct, okay, in the sense that you wouldn't have to pay that person anymore if you gave that responsibility to the regional coalition.
So the region will have somebody here to take care of that?
Yes, sir. That would be shared staff among the whole region.
Well, then that person may be where?
Don't know yet. Could be Alexandria, could be Winfield for Region 2.
So how would they administer in Alexandria, Lincoln Parish?
That's a great point. They would be boots on the ground. We would have staff that are at every one of your meetings that are accessible to the public, that do things digitally through the phone, doing field work, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, they just about have to be here full time. I mean, if you got to wait for them to come if you got a question about floodplain?
Not necessarily. I can tell you we do regional building code enforcement right now in multiple parishes, and we have about a 24-hour turnaround period for getting out in the field to respond. So, not necessarily. But I'm gauging from your comments that you don't like the idea of giving up the authority to a regional organization on this one.
No, I didn't say that. I'm just trying to clarify.
Okay?
I understood that you might reimburse the person that we had doing it.
That actually hasn't been discussed yet. It's just because it's not an idea that the coalition's had yet doesn't mean that it's impossible. Any other points on that? This is the toughest one. The rest of them are pretty easy.
So if you got one person that's monitoring Lincoln Parish, and then you got another person that looks like that's what's going to be part of Mississippi River, looks like they're going to spend a lot of time down there.
It's possible. Again, if you think about enforcement from a development standpoint, it's going to be where the activity's happening. I can tell you that in LaSalle Parish, for instance, where we already do code enforcement, there's not as much of a need to have somebody out there, 8 hours a day. Whereas up here, you guys have a little bit more activity going on, so staff would be more dedicated and push to where they're needed.
Well, our concern would be just not delaying it. For the developer or the person that wants an answer doesn't have to wait a week or two to get an answer.
Absolutely. Completely understand point taken. As we build the thing, if this thing gets off the ground to legislation next year, I promise we'll take that into consideration because we don't want to be a hindrance to development. All right.
Mr. President, quick question. What's our cost now currently? What kind of cost are we incurring, do we know, for this type of stuff?
Jackson Matthews is the one that currently wears that hat, and
Okay.
we don't pay anything extra for him to do that.
Okay.
So, I will tell you this, I think that Kevin and myself, and Jackson would say this as well, I don't feel like we are properly knowledgeable nor equipped to handle this role. There's a lot of regulations that go along with this. There's a lot of specific knowledge that goes along with this that is very difficult to keep up with. So that, that's the one thing I am liking that I'm hearing is you'll have actual people that are, this is their field. Whereas this is like the 15th hat that someone else is wearing.
Right.
So
And so we might even have some liability associated with right now with the way that we're classified.
I would say that's definitely a possibility.
No doubt. I will tell you for smaller communities, the village of LeCount is a good example. Mayor gets elected, he finds out 2 years into his term. He's also the de facto floodplain manager. Well, what's he been doing for 2 years? He didn't even know he had the job. FEMA shows up, does a community assistance visit, which, let's be honest, that's an audit, and all of a sudden they find out they're doing all these things wrong. Well, he's 2 years into his term. Let's say he doesn't get elected 2 years from now. Whatever he does learn in the final 2 years of his term goes out the door with him with the new election. The idea is to have some consistency region-wide for folks that are dedicated to doing this type of work day in and day out. Not only for you, but across the region so that there's enough work to keep them busy.
So if you did this, it'd include all the municipalities in Lincoln Parish too, or just?
Just the ones inside of Region 2, which would be half of Ruston, I believe.
So what about the other region?
That it would be, that whatever region they fall in, the staff would serve them. So for Region 2, the staff for Region 2 would
Well, my
serve.
question is, the police juries outside the cities, they don't administer in the towns now, do
Our municipalities?
they? Yeah.
Yes.
They do?
And I was gonna say that was what I was gonna kind of piggyback on what he was saying. We've had a situation in the last year or two, well, since I've been here, in a municipality where there was some question about something, there was an issue. In that particular situation, the police chief was the floodplain manager, knew nothing about floodplain manager, nothing. And he fully admitted that, but that was just something they had to put on a piece of paper, someone's name that was gonna be the floodplain manager for that municipality. So that's the situations I think that you get into here, where, everyone has to have one.
I can tell you as a representative for the staff that's possibly going to be the staff for this region. Our folks have done this work for a long enough time that we understand how to make the rules work for the people they're meant to serve. They're regulatory and they do tend to be a hindrance as much as they are just, if you just read it in black and white, we have learned to try to manipulate that, and I mean that in the best possible way, to benefit the folks they're meant to serve. We don't want this to be something that's dropped on them. We're meant to be their advocates to help them navigate all the rules and regulations that are part of this program. Sorry, Mr. Question.
So Lincoln Parish is split here,
Yes, sir.
Region 1, Region 2, right?
2 and 3, I believe.
2 and 3. So we would have two different representatives, depending on which side of the parish we live on, you're dealing with possibly two different things on that issue right there.
Yes, sir. Possibly. There is a point to be made on that, and that's point number 5. I'll get there very quickly, I promise. That's a good discussion. These are fantastic points. Thank you for asking them. I'm going to blow through the next few really fast. These tend to be no-brainers, which is why I do the toughest one first. Would you like the idea of having free staff that are working for you even when you don't know it, to do things like possibly implement the community rating system, which most people don't do now because of the costs associated with it? Wouldn't cost you anything, your citizens get the benefit, staff would be doing it to make sure you're complying and getting the benefits, which are lower flood insurance premiums for your folks. You guys like that idea?
Sure.
Pretty easy one, thank you. Next one is the running of the model. DOTD spending over $100 million statewide for each of these regions to develop hydrological models that will be able to show, if you build some kind of major capital improvement, what effect would it have? We're gonna build a new diversion canal, we're gonna implement some new culverts across the region. How will they actually affect drainage? We'll be able to model that and give you some outputs rather than, on a larger scale, on a regional scale, rather than just a small scale, looking at what's right in the vicinity. Our idea is that those models, when they're finished, should be housed at the region. They shouldn't be housed by a state agency that you don't have access to. And I'm obviously trying to sell that, so let me back that up a little bit. Do you like the idea of it being housed regionally versus being housed at a state agency?
Sure.
Yeah, I like that.
Fantastic. You got closer access, you guys will always be able to find us. We believe that the state does have a role to play and that they should be the referee and provide some oversight. For instance, I believe that there could be a boundary dispute between Region 2 and Region 3 that could accommodate some of the issues that you mentioned a while ago. There is another boundary that follows a HUD watershed. If you look at the way the models are being developed by DOTD, it changes significantly the line between 2 and 3. Makes Region 2 a lot bigger. I'm not just trying to grow an empire. I believe that it makes sense to have it follow that actual watershed. And this is not another shot at you, Aaron. And I also believe that a larger geography allows us to spread the future cost of this over a larger region. So do you guys like the idea of having a state agency provide oversight whenever we need somebody to referee between the regions?
Yep.
All right, head nods on that?
Matt, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is it permissible to ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are these regions divided according to rivers?
Somewhat. They're watershed basins. So these are the HUC 8 hydrological unit codes. It's a geological.
So everything in Region 3 drains that way,
Yes, sir.
and then everything in 2 drains down through Doug Demona and...
Yes, for the most part. Again, there's another boundary for region between 2 and 3 where it could move easterly a little bit, but that's a discussion for another day.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, then last point, how is this thing funded in the future? I want to get some feedback from you on this. I'm going to say some dirty words here. Millage, sales tax, stormwater utility fees, development fees. These are all possibilities for the way this thing gets funded after the grant funding, the $1.2 billion runs out. Right now, $400,000 is allocated to each of the regions through a regional capacity building grant program. That is what's paid for the staff time to be here, it's paying Karen to be here. For each of these regions, they've got that. We anticipate they're going to extend that, maybe one more round, which could get us another 2 to 3 years of free work for you guys. But after that, at some point, we've got to implement local funding to keep it in place. When you look at regions this big, if you look at something like stormwater utility fees or a small $50 development fee, that is something that could generate substantial funds that is the seed money to keep the staff in place, running these operations, doing the NFIP, administering the community rating system program, all of that stuff. And then in addition, every time they go and apply for grant funds and get something to win a project for you, they get the admin funds off of that as well to implement and help you get it off the ground. That helps them grow that agency to be big enough to serve all the folks that need it. Not too big to where they can't keep the mouths fed, but big enough to serve all of the region as it's needed. So those are some of the different things that have been discussed. I'll tell you, Region 5 loves the idea of millages. I have no idea how they think they're going to get that passed. Sales tax, most of us are maxed out on where we are on sales tax. So I think something small scale, if you look at development fees, that's a one time. You pay that one time, you got some type of new development. And that would be everything. Anytime somebody brings in a new mobile home, $25, $50 fee, whatever it is, and that goes towards this. If you look at something like a stormwater utility fee, that's something that is assessed to every property that can be done annually. So it's, again, small scale, not going to cost anybody, any one person a ton of money, but it would be a recurring fee. So do you have any feedback on what you think might be a reasonable way to get this thing funded in the future?
How long will the 1.2 billion last?
They have 12 years, they have 12 years to spend it. But for the operational part for the coalitions, we don't know that it's going to go farther than June of next year. We're anticipating that they're going to give us another round of the 400,000, but we don't know that. So our push is to get that at least one more time, because the idea is that once we're in place, once these coalitions are up and running, we can show you what you can get so that you get a little bit of a try before you buy scenario.
Mr. President, what would be the operational cost? I mean, do we have any kind of estimates on what that would be?
I've roughly thrown together some numbers that would be comparable to what we're doing now. Again, the idea is that the 400,000 paid for a couple of years as we were ramping up, not knowing exactly what we're doing. I think a $400,000 budget for Region 2, which is much smaller, would be reasonable to get started. And the idea is that as we win some of those grant awards for you, as we help you implement capital improvements, the admin funds off of that would let us grow a little bit.
So what you're saying, the cost would be different from Region 2 or Region 3?
Yes, sir, because of the size of the area they're trying to
But
cover.
both of those are in Lincoln Parish, so how does that work?
That's a great question. If they implement the same fee schedule, let's say we do a $50 development fee, it doesn't mean that the fee has to be different. It just means that they may generate more money because they have a larger geography and more population within it, more activity. So again, if Region 2 implements a $50 fee and the region around New Orleans implements a $50 development fee, they're obviously going to generate a ton more money than we would.
We're talking about 1.2 billion, right, initially?
For the entire
For
state,
the
yes.
entire state?
That includes some capital improvement funds. About $263 million will be in motion by the fall of this year.
Might I ask a question, Mr. President?
Yeah.
So the approximate budget, and let's say use $400,000 annual budget, that would be divided among all of the parishes and all the municipalities within the region, correct? Not equally, but
Again, we're not coming to hit your budget for that. As people apply for fees or apply for permits, if we did a development fee, if we go another route, stormwater utility fees, we have to figure out how to assess that. But it wouldn't be us coming to you asking for a portion of your budget. It would be a charge fee to individual citizens as they're coming in and applying for permits.
we'd be responsible for collecting it.
That's what I say, how you gonna collect it?
That's a great question.
Okay.
We do it on building code enforcement right now regionally through some software. I think that we could tweak the software to make it work a couple of different ways, but partnerships with the local entities is probably the best way to get there.
Where do we get the money to educate the public as to our purpose and the purpose for which the fees will be used?
Thank you so much. I actually should have mentioned that as one of my former points. When I mentioned the staff doing the grant writing and the NFIP work and running the models, another major component of that, the effort is listed in here, is education and outreach. The staff out of the capacity building grant program is meant to be doing that on, like we're doing right now, making sure you guys are educated. We can also do town hall meetings as we're up and running to do the same thing. Those local funds as they're generated, whether that's 3 years from now or next year, will do the same thing, pay for the education and outreach, and the staff will be doing that work on your behalf.
So if you got people in Region 2 parishes, one of them wants in and one of them doesn't, how do you do that?
That's a great question. Here's how I'm envisioning it right now. For Region 2, what we're pushing is for the legislation next year to enable this political subdivision, this new coalition to do the work, but it not be mandated. The idea is that if we have the state shoved down your throat, you're never going to trust me. You're never going to trust our agencies or our staff. However, if we enable it, but it's allowed for you guys to buy in or to vote to be a part of it later, then you've got a little bit of an opportunity for me to show you what we can do before you sign up with us. So that's how we're pushing it. Enabled but not mandated from the state level.
Any possibility a portion of the 1.2 billion or additional federal funds later could be used to fund this somewhat, not indefinitely, but for, let's just say 10 or 15 years?
A possibility for sure. I don't think it's likely.
That's a lot of money.
It is. Well, so the 1.2 billion is being spent on more than just this.
Sure. Okay.
That's a very, very small.
More than just the watershed initiative?
More than just the staff time for the capacity building. They're spending it on the development of those models that I mentioned.
Yeah.
They're spending it on a boatload of education outreach. Is actually they're spending it on. Help me out here. What am I missing here? The capital improvement. Good Lord, that's the biggest part of it. So 263 million will be in motion this fall. There'll be another $250 million within 2 to 3 years where they can evaluate projects using the models. That's round 2, and then round 3 will come another 2 to 3 years after that, which would be another $250 million. So the largest portion of it's going to actually implement projects. So that's the reason we can't just spread the 1.2 out for operational costs for the next 12 years. I like the idea.
So how many staff members, we have 8 regions, and certainly we'll have a staff member for each region, that's not what we're after here, right? I mean, is it one staff member will look after all that, or 3 or 4?
Oh, no. We
5?
anticipate it being a handful. So for Region 2, my thought is with the amount of activity, just trying to get the folks into the meetings to hear the things that you guys think are important so that we can start figuring out what the marrying up funding opportunities with the needs that you guys present, whether it's meetings like this, whether it's gravity drainage districts. My guess is we would probably need at least 5 starting out for Region 2. And keep in mind that is the most rural and the smallest region. So the other ones would probably need to be a good bit larger. I can tell you Region 1 right now is trying to cover it with 3, and it's not enough.
So if I'm the public
Yes, sir.
and I come to a meeting that you're trying to sell this, what is my benefit? What do I get out of it?
All right, here we go. The National Flood Insurance Program, we keep you in compliance, we keep you out of hot water. We also educate you as a member of the public that if you elevate that home right above the base flood elevation, if you're in a flood zone, we can not only reduce your flood risk, but also lower your flood insurance premiums.
But they're getting that now. They're getting that from us.
Are you guys implementing the CRS right now, Community Rating System?
Well, I guess we are.
Somebody does a flood map around here, I believe it's the city of Ruston.
Jackson Matthews takes care of it.
Yeah, Jackson has it, yeah.
My guess is you probably don't participate in CRS. You may, but chances are you don't because it's a mountain of paperwork for a low benefit. But in this case, your citizens would get that benefit without you having to front any money for it. And just the lowest rung of that could equal a $30 annual reduction for every flood insurance policy in the parish. That's the lowest rung, and if we do it right, we can climb the rung and get from a level 8 to level 4 and start saving hundreds of dollars for people a year, which adds up when you think about all the potential policies that are in flood zones.
Yeah, that's easy to sell where you got a lot of flooding, but when you're in the hilly country, that's not as easy as.
Do we have
Okay, Mr. Russ.
Do we have any record on how many flood policies we actually have in our parish?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, you can get access to that data through FEMA. You can also get a list of the repetitive loss and severe repetitive loss structures in your parish as well.
Okay, any other questions?
To my knowledge, there's one repetitive loss structure in Lincoln Parish.
Really?
It was done years ago, and why it stays on the record like that, I don't know. But yes, but also clarifying me, a lot of these questions I've been listening to. Section 2 for Lincoln Parish, that Region 2, is basically everything west of 167, south of I-20, that flows into the Doug Lamone area. The rest of the parish, to my knowledge,
Goes
is all
north.
part of Region 3,
That's
that
right.
flows into Darbone and the Washita flood.
Goes east and south, yes, sir.
You're right.
You're on.
Okay, any other questions? You got any other comments?
No, sir. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you,
I know we're
Mayor.
on my 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for
Okay, the
coming up
next
here.
item is,
Karen.
okay.
It's Ms. Karen Cubic from Region 3.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a little different approach than Matt on my presentation, and we do have a PowerPoint that will be showing. I want to point out that I have you a packet at your place, and on this side is your the regional Louisiana Watershed Initiative and how we're moving forward as a regional approach to watershed management. And then if you have any questions, we can try to take on those as well. Those I can handle, we'll answer on the comment card and get back to you. I also have Lisa Richardson here. She's running the PowerPoint. She is the Region 3 floodplain manager. We all know that water is incapable of staying within a political boundary. We know that water goes across cities, towns, parishes, and states. And one jurisdiction can actually impact the water flow on another jurisdiction. We need to extend our understanding of river systems beyond that of our local river, and we need to understand the larger network of rivers throughout the state and how actions in one community impact that of another community. Louisiana has been given this awesome opportunity to change how we as a state look at flood risk. We know that we need lasting solutions because we know that we're going to flood. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And 100-year floods don't happen every 100 years. People have a great misunderstanding of that. There are multiple watersheds within our state, but what is a watershed? It's where water drains to a common point. And large watersheds actually have smaller watersheds within them. And they all still flow to that common point. And if we want to get to the root of our flooding issues, we need to understand how to mitigate the effects of future floods. We need to look at how water flows, and we need to look at our natural floodplains. This is where water naturally stores. And we need to know how the water flows and how it's stored so that we can better plan our projects. We need to reduce flood risk, improve floodplain management throughout the state, and maximize the benefit that we have with natural and beneficial functions of floodplains. There are 4 significant principles of Louisiana Watershed Initiative: optimizing scientific tools and approaches, ensuring transparent and objective decision-making, maximizing natural flood function of floodplains, and focusing on regional water management. Congress allocated, as Matt said, $1.2 billion in 2018 in the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018. This came after the 2016 floods. We know the state experienced two tremendous flooding periods. One in March, and I was heavily involved in that in Washita, as well as in August down in the Denham Springs area. Now, it took until September 2020 for HUD to actually sign an agreement with the state to give funds. The state had to provide this thing called an action plan, and it tells exactly how they plan to spend the money. You were asking earlier how much money is going to different things. They, for local and regional watershed projects and programs, they have $570 million, or 47% of that 1.2 is going toward local and regional watershed projects. 27% is going to state projects and programs, and that's $327 million. They're also going to help with some non-federal cost share assistance, and there's watershed monitoring, mapping, and modeling at $145 million. Those are the things that you're seeing where they're coming and doing those H&H studies. There's going to be modeling that we can use as we develop our projects in the future. This is very beneficial to us as a state, not just a region. They also do have some administrative costs of $48 million, or 4%. And then there's 2% out there for watershed policy planning and local capacity assistance. So that's how they're planning on spending that 1.2. I know you were asking that earlier, and I found it in here real quick for you. Dr. John Bell Edwards put forth the Council on Watershed Management, or the Watershed Council. You can actually watch those meetings on Zoom if you would like. They meet fairly regularly. And they involve, this council involves different state agencies. There's the Office of Community Development, Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries, and DOTD. The state used a portion of these HUD grant funds for a regional capacity building grant program. These grants gave each region $400,000 to spend on preparing the regions for this new approach to watershed management. There are 8 regions in our state, and each one got $400,000. And that grant can be used to form regional steering committees and later watershed coalitions and managing entities. The steering committee is what is meeting now. Lincoln Parish does have a representative on the Region 3 steering committee, and that is Kevin. And he checks in with us regularly, whether it's in person or on Zoom. We've got to be Zoom experts. We're to provide recommendations for long-term regional watershed management frameworks, and that's something that's going along with this recommendation that you have before you. That's a provisional recommendation at this point. We're to build regional staff capacity and outreach and floodplain management at the watershed scale and produce a regional capital improvement inventory of flood risk reduction projects. We are in Region 3, and the Ouachita Parish Police Jury is the fiscal agent for the Regional Capacity Building Grant. I actually was working with this grant before I got to be the watershed coordinator because I'm the assistant treasurer for Ouachita Parish Police Jury. Lisa actually works for the Parish Police Jury as well as our floodplain manager. The police jury was selected to be the fiscal agent when we had a meeting of all the parishes and the municipalities, and they determined that the police jury was the best option to be this agent. Again, we have 14 parishes in the region. Each parish has representation on the committee. Our first meeting was held May 2020. We have held 9 steering committee meetings, 4 planning workshops in the region, and on this outreach tour, we will meet with all 14 police juries, as well as have community meetings and in person and on Zoom. As the steering committee was preparing to write a provisional recommendation, OCD did take us through exercises. We talked about the what, the who, the when of how to work our governance for floodplain management. The committee worked through the exercises in the fall, approved the provisional recommendation in January, and sent it to the state. We are currently doing this outreach so we can get feedback because that provisional recommendation needs to be tweaked after we get your feedback. And that is what the card's for, and that's why you can email me, call me, whatever you need to do to give me that feedback. After we get it, we will tweak the recommendation, and then we'll send that to the state. The state will gather all 8 recommendations, and then we will work to get it in the legislature. As Matt said, it's going to be next year. It will not be this year, it will be next year. The steering committees will eventually go away, and the coalition take their place. In working with that, there are regional recommendations, and it has 5 key parts. There are potential roles and responsibilities, authorities to enable tasks that currently cannot be done at a regional scale, composition of a future watershed coalition or management entity, facilitation of the coalition, and process for implementation. The screen shows the various roles and responsibilities along with the authorities that the provisional recommendations include. And she is there. And I will let you read that. I think you can read just as good as I can. The next screen shows a summary of how the regional steering committees decided to look at the coalition's composition and facilitation. Overall, the steering committee did not want to avoid creating more layers of government. None of us want more headache. But we want things to work in a smooth fashion that gets us where we need to go, and we eliminate as much flooding as possible. That is the key point. And you also have to take into consideration that all 8 regions will actually have the opportunity to operate differently. We won't all actually be doing the exact same thing. Region 3 has recommendations. You can read them in your brochure. Yes, we're working on doing things such as planning to preserve some areas, retain water, and coordinate and prioritize operation and maintenance of river systems in the region. We want to encourage adoption of regional standards for the watershed. We want to look at that data modeling. Who's going to house it? We want it regionally, and we want it to where we can get it, and we want to encourage our people to use it. Again, I'm not reading all this, I'm just going to skim over a little bit of it. We want to be able to enter into contracts. We also have to be able to generate revenue. I think that those are things that we have to look at very carefully, because it's going to be a hard sell when you generate revenue. Let's face it, the tax is not going to go very smoothly. So we need to look beyond what we can do with the tax. What else is out there? And we also may need to borrow funds or what have you. The provisional recommendation leaves things a little open, because let's face it, the legislature will give us what we can and can't do. These are great to tell the legislature what we want to do, but they will make the final decision. We don't get to do that. What we want them to do is to issue one legislation that gives us a menu of options. And Region 2 can operate this way, Region 3 can operate this way, 4, 5, and 6 can operate differently. But having the one legislation that we all choose from, and that way we can grow within it as necessary, because we may find that in 1 or 2 years into it that we need to take on that responsibility or this other responsibility. And we can do that if it's already in the legislation, without having to ask for more legislation. So I think I'm getting to the point everybody likes the screen. One more. It's the end of the presentation. Again, if you have any questions or comments, I can try to take them. If I can't answer you tonight, we'll get back to you. But you have the opportunity to let me know anything on your comment card.
Any questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We can
Okay.
give these cards to you.
You can give them to me, or you can give them to Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin. Okay. Next item, I'm gonna skip forward and go to the item that we added, existing leases on Complex 2, and we'll go back to 4.
At a recent meeting, the jury authorized me to negotiate with our tenants concerning renewing leases at the Complex 2 building. In the process of doing that, I've been working with the folks at Dollar General for at least the last month on trying to come to an agreement on their existing lease. That store is used as a training center for Dollar General. And because of that, they are reluctant to put any sort of clause in their agreement that would allow us to get out of that agreement, a cancellation clause in the lease that would allow us to get out of it early. So they're asking that we sign just a straight 3-year lease with them. Otherwise, they're going to have to find another location because it is a training center. They've been excellent tenants for us. They've been there for a very, very long time. They're a very stable tenant. I will say that we are having a difficult time getting a tenant for the former cricket location. I've had several calls about it. I've had several people that have toured the space, but still have not got a renter there. And I'm not looking forward to having a second empty location. Honestly, I do not think that we're going to abandon that building within the next 3 years. I don't think we have that far of a plan spelled out at this point. And if we do, at that point, we can negotiate with them on buying out the rest of their contract. But I think at this point, it'd be wise to go ahead and negotiate with them on a 3-year straight-term lease for that building. I'm going to have to do the same negotiations with Aaron's at some time in the near future. And so I guess I'm asking you for the flexibility to not have that 6-month cancellation clause as a requirement in the negotiations
When does the lease go out?
at the end of this month.
End of this month?
I believe it's in this month. It's towards the end of the month.
Mr. President, question.
Yes.
Are they objecting to anything shorter than 3 years, or are they simply objecting?
Yes, they asked originally for 5,
Okay.
and
So this is already a part of the
Yes.
negotiations?
Right.
So there's really not much room on that?
I don't think they're going to go for anything shorter than 3.
Any other questions or comments or suggestions?
I suggest that we remove that clause from that lease, because that particular store is a hub. I mean, it brings in good dollars because of its location. You know, you have the gas, the driver's license place there, you have the bank there. So unless we plan to do something with that building within the next 3 years, my suggestion is that we remove that clause.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion or you?
I second.
Motion second that we remove the clause of the 6-month cancellation clause and you continue to negotiate the lease. Any questions or discussion?
I would just recommend that we, during the course of those negotiations, that we might even look into what those termination costs would be now,
Yes.
rather than later. In case we needed to or wanted to go that route, we would already have those terms outlined in the contract.
I agree. We'll work on that, yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
I abstain.
Mr. Russell abstains. Okay, the next item is the presentation of the exit audit. Ms. Laura R.
Let me get my microphone up here.
Yeah, where, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. Jurors, thank you. On January 21st, you engaged Billy Halsey to perform an exit audit as a result of a key position, the treasurer, resigning suddenly. Billy has performed your financial audit for many years. I think it might be decades, plural, at this point. And Billy is here.
Decades.
I
Yes.
I thought it was decades, plural, so I know we have some new faces on the jury, and the audit process hasn't happened since you've been here, so Billy's in the crowd, and I might refer to him if I need to. But Billy has subcontracted myself to perform the actual specific tasks that you requested in that engagement letter in January. So just to review, what is an exit audit? It's a tailored engagement that you requested. It's a specific list of procedures meant to ensure the continuity of operations and prevent any deadlines from being missed, and to generally give you guys some insight into the state of your financial records. Some of the tasks are more housekeeping in nature, for example, creating a list of all of the bank account numbers and reviewing the authorized signatures at each financial institution. Then other tasks that you asked us to perform are designed to make sure there are no urgent deadlines that can get missed during that type of transition. What an exit audit is not, it was not designed to detect instances of fraud or non-compliance with laws or regulations. That type of information would likely be determined in your annual audit. However, if there had been any suspected fraud or non-compliance issues discovered during our tasks, we would communicate that to you tonight. What I found was that all vendor invoices, payroll tax deposits, and pension plan contributions had been made timely and consistently, so there were no issues related to the payment process. I reviewed the budget documents for completion and found no issues or violations with the Louisiana Local Government Budget Act. I did identify several deficiencies regarding the accounting records for 2020, which the current staff and myself are working to resolve. Namely, those deficiencies are: The bank statements for the main operating account and the majority of funds had not been reconciled since April of 2020. This is a major deficiency as it can cause financial reports distributed by the treasurer and provided to the jury to contain errors and misrepresentations. I also identified numerous deficiencies in internal controls established by the jury to prevent fraud or non-compliance. Specifically, numerous cash and check receipts, namely, or what I mean is deposits that need to go to the bank, were held on hand in the jury administration offices and not reconciled and deposited until several weeks after receipt. The internal control procedure states that any cash received will be deposited within 1 business day of receipt. So that's the goal compared to what we noted was that cash and checks were lingering in the office for weeks at a time before they made it to the bank. Numerous purchases for office supplies and small equipment purchases were made by circumventing the purchasing policy in place. This prevents the documentation as it relates to the purchasing policy to be kept on record, which is the audit trail for those types of purchases. So it basically circumvents the approval process for certain purchases. Sales tax returns on the revenue from overnight stays, which are the RV spots at the Expo Center and the Parish Park, had not been submitted, and the related sales tax payments had not been made since October of 2020. So those were several months behind. Another issue, funding from rural development for the detention center dorm had been significantly delayed due to the annual certification process through the federal system of awards management not being done. The funding delay caused seriously delinquent payments to be made to the contractor. These deficiencies will likely lead to audit findings for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Because of these deficiencies, the records cannot be audited on time. Usually Billy and his staff begin the audit process in the middle of March, but I don't anticipate having the records ready for Billy to turn over to Billy until at least June the 1st. So that means we kind of get out of Billy's schedule. So I've asked him if he thinks he could start in July, and that's a possibility, July or August. The formal report that outlines these findings that I've read to you tonight will be issued by Mr. Halsey in the next couple of weeks. And that concludes the exit audit report that I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you need a motion to approve her report?
Accept and approve our report, yes.
All right, I make that motion.
Have a second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Okay, moving to the request for non-emergency extension of time.
It's related to the exit audit findings that I just shared with you. We just can't have the records caught up from that far back and ready to turn over to Billy in time for him to complete the audit, which is actually due to the state, to the legislative auditor on June the 30th. So there is an application process that we can submit an application to the legislative auditor for an extension of time. It's usually a blanket 90-day extension, and I think we can accomplish the audit in that time. However, if we are not granted that extension, it would be an audit finding for a late filing. But what I'm asking for tonight is your permission to at least apply for the extension.
I have a motion to apply for the extension.
So moved.
Stoller, motion, seconded. Melton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, audit engagement. And Mr. Halsey, you want to stand up and stay a word? Some people may not know who you are, but you can come on up to the mic if you want to say something. Mr. Halsey was doing the audit when I was here. That's the reason I know it was in the decades. Decades.
I started doing it in Ray Sutton.
Oh, okay. That's over 30 years ago.
I was a little white and gray.
Anybody?
We'll be able to start as soon as Laura has our records. We plan every year, get started, in March and then really concentrated on after that season. And we've always been able, I don't know if we've ever been late. Not in our recollection, ever been late. But this year is unprecedented. There were we'll get it done, we'll get it on time, and I'll be glad to come back as, you know, July, maybe 1st of August, and give you an update as to where we are.
Okay.
And give you some insight, if you find anything else that's worthy to come before the jury.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Halsey?
We appreciate what he has done for a number of years for us.
So I have a motion to approve the engagement, Mr. Halsey, to do the audit.
Mr. President, I make the motion.
Swat makes a motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hunt.
Ms. Hunt?
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Okay, discuss and take action on, section 3.6B of the ordinance 177-97-8 prohibiting bottle clubs.
In your packet, item 7, pages 23 and 24. Page 23 is our current ordinance that defines bottle clubs and private clubs in the parishes, and you can read those definitions. There's been a number of incidents recently concerning bottle clubs in the parish that have caused some serious problems with law enforcement. And Sheriff Williams contacted me and asked if we would consider prohibiting bottle clubs in the parish. This is something that the city of Ruston has already done, the city of Grambling has already done because of similar issues that they have had. Landon Hunt, Chief Deputy Landon Hunt is here. Landon, if you want to come forward. This is Logan's much better looking brother.
Thank y'all. First, I want to say I appreciate y'all's time. Just give y'all a brief overview of kind of what we've been dealing with here lately. And it's really picked up, I think, mainly because of the coronavirus, shutting down all the other bars and clubs, and folks looking for something to do. What they're doing is the young folks are coming in and they'll go to an event venue and tell them they want to host, say, a small birthday party. They'll rent the place out for, say, $1,000 and get it for Saturday night. They'll turn around and get on social media, create an invitation, and push it out to thousands of people. They'll charge a little bit per person at the door and tell everybody it's BYOB, so folks will come from all around, bringing their alcohol with them. I don't want to paint a picture of the last one we had. It was about 6 weeks ago on Highway 33. I talked to the shift lieutenant the next day. He said it was probably somewhere between 800 and 1,000 people, whether they were inside the building, on the parking lot of the facility, also across the street at Walker's Garage, and across the 4-lane highway at the church. People were walking back and forth from the church parking lot across the 4-lane highway, intoxicated. Just a bad situation. We ended up getting several complaints that night from nearby the residential areas on Trace Drive, Haddix Road, Burgessville, that whole area, about the loud music. The shift comes out to deal with it, ends up seeing how many people are there, realizing we don't have enough people. We called the city out. We had probably 6 deputies that night, probably 6 or 7 city police officers to come out to regain control of it, to shut it down, and send everybody on the way. The next morning, filled with several complaints from the local businesses next door. You know, the yards are littered up, beer bottles broken on the parking lot. The church was a mess. Like Doug said, I spoke with several law enforcement officials in the parish. I spoke with Chief Clark first. He said that they did away with their bottle club ordinances in 2013, right after they had a shooting. I spoke with Chief Rogers with the city of Ruston. They had a shooting at the Norton building in 2020, January 2020. Since then, they have repealed their ordinances. So we're coming to y'all to ask to do away with this bottle club ordinances before something similar happens in our community.
I make a motion that we do away with that ordinance.
The motion is to amend the ordinance to do with bottle clubs, yeah.
Correct. And I'll just note that on the item 7 on page 24, instead of subsection there of A, it should be B, But this just changes the hours of all the clubs to prohibit things in general.
I have a second.
Second.
I said,
Second. Any discussion or questions?
No, I got a discussion. Now, this wouldn't affect any type of like wedding venues or reception halls that they were serving alcohol at the wedding or the reception.
That's right. Yeah, so that would be a private event, and you invite people to your wedding, and they come, serve alcohol, just fine. The problem is when they turn it into a business, when I start taking money at the door, and you bring your alcohol with you.
Right, okay.
Does that, question,
Yes,
does
sir.
that happen often?
It has lately, like I said, I think that's mainly because the coronavirus has shut down all these other bars and clubs, and they're trying to find somewhere to congregate.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Okay, authorize advertising for hot mix.
So this is just for our road repair program. This is our annual bid for 6 months bid for hot mix
Is this in place or is this picked up?
patching.
Picked up then?
If you pick it up, use it.
Yeah.
I hear a motion to advertise for hot mix.
So moved. I
Second.
got it. Oh, sorry.
Motion, second. Okay, now discussion.
Do we do any of this ourselves? Any chip, any hot mix, any?
Oh, yeah, that's what this is. That's what this is. This is where we go and get the hot mix and patching potholes and things of that nature. That's
That's
right.
contracting out for somebody else to come out and do.
That's correct. We do most of our work ourselves. The only work that we contract out currently,
Something for the roads.
right. Most of that's for material that we use ourselves. The only projects that we contract out as far as labor are concerned are the ones that you'll see in the CIP program where it's, asphalt overlays in place.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Accept bids on culverts due to withdrawal.
So if you look in section 9, Tri-State Culvert, who was the low bid, has withdrawn their bid due to volatility in the market and supply shortage. So I have brought to your place a new sheet that looks like this. And these are the new, this includes their withdrawal and the other bidders for the project. You'll note that various bidders were the low bid on various culvert sizes. And so I'm just going to ask that we accept the low bid for each of the appropriate culvert sizes here.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Wise, seconded by Ms. Frawley. Any discussion or questions?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Kedco, I'm not familiar with many of these, but Kedco, they're down in Madisonville. How do we transport
We buy them by the truckload and they deliver.
that? Okay. There's no additional charge for delivery.
No, I think it's included.
Okay.
Any other question? Yes, okay.
Was it a penalty for those withdrawing or nothing in place for them to withdraw their bids or anything like that?
I don't.
Not that I'm advocating that it should be, I'm just asking.
No, not that I'm aware of, and Ms. Webb wasn't able to be here tonight, but we had a discussion about it. I think if you wanted to really push the issue, you could probably file suit against them but
It's not
for the
No,
little bit of difference in the bid, it's probably not worth it.
No, absolutely, I agree.
No.
Actually, if it was one, I didn't want to lose money, we'd help them get out of it, is the only reason I was asking, you know.
Mr. President.
I don't want it to cost anything.
Okay. Mr. Ross?
Another question. Based upon the lowest bid, we have irrigation mart in Ruston and Cohair Drainage in Shreveport. On the first 3 items, they have offered the same bid.
Correct.
You can use either one.
You can use either one, that's correct.
Okay.
Typically, probably in that situation, we would probably use the local,
Well,
would be our first choice.
I certainly would recommend we use the
Yes.
local people
Yes.
whenever possible.
We try to do that as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
And if the instance there would be if they were out of a particular,
Sure.
You think Shreveport is gonna back out for that 15-inch, 30-foot pipe for 50 cents? I hope so.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Huh?
Second time you ignored me.
Well, you weren't here, you're supposed to comment in the beginning on the agenda. What's your question?
Don't worry about it. Ask.
Well, I'll give you a chance to intervene.
Ask the question. You know, you all made a motion to accept the low bid. You didn't say anything about the low bid that meets specifications. And I want to know, are you accepting the low bid or the low bid that meets specifications?
I think we left off that terminology, but yeah, we're accepting the low bid that meets specifications.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, accept bids on Heath Road and Walnut Creek Road.
Yes, and I know that the print on this bid tabulation sheet is small, but I hope you can see the numbers because they're good to look at. Our estimate for both of these bridges was right at $1 million for the two. Our low bid came in at $679,434. I can't see it either. So considerably under budget. So we were very happy about that. We actually had two bids that were considerably under budget. So that's specialty track hoe and dozer services. They're out of Shreveport. Mr. Schuler indicated to me that he has worked with them in the past and is pleased with their performance.
So, can you tell me what talk about what the schedule is and when they would start if we approve this?
And I don't have it with me, but and Duncan Hunter left. I can get that to you. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, that's what I wanted. Okay.
I got a question.
It's the schedule was included in the bid documents, and so we're going to hold them to the schedule.
I understand, but I think we need to notify the public. We fixed to close two roads for a number of months, and we need to notify the public of when that's going to be and how long.
I'll include that in our report next month.
Now, if we start for next month, we need to know before next month. We need to.
Then we'll publish it on our social media and put it in the newspaper. How's that?
No.
Okay, so what would you like for me to do, Mr. Garrett?
Both of these are my district,
I understand.
and most of the people that are down there are not on social media, so
I got you.
that's the reason I want to make sure tonight that we knew what the schedule was and when we're going to start. That's all I want to know, when we're going to start, and how long we're going to be, the road's going to be closed. Okay, all in favor of accepting the low bid, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Can I ask a question about that? What we just voted on real quick? Didn't we just do a bridge in-house ourselves?
We did.
What bridge was that?
Gaskin Road.
Gaskin, that's what I thought.
Correct.
Do we know about what it cost us to do Gaskin Road in-house?
It was a different type of bridge.
It's not one.
It was a timber bridge, these are going to be concrete.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I could probably pull those numbers. We could probably pull those numbers together. And the thing is, we have to calculate the labor hours that goes into that. I will say this. We can do that. That is a large and monumental task currently. However, we have just implemented our new work order system where now we are inputting all of that data into our work order system, and for every project that we're doing, at the touch of a button, we're able to calculate those numbers very easily. And that's one of the reasons we wanted this system, is because we'll be able to tell you at the end of the project exactly what it costs, both in materials and labor.
We're not at 100% yet.
No, we're getting there. That's our goal.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, now we'll go to the budget report, Ms. Laura.
George, I said at your place, the monthly budget to actual report. I don't have a lot to point out as far as the budget to actual this month because there wasn't any unusual items. There are no, at the fund level, there are no variances of 5% or more that would necessitate a budget amendment being presented to you. We have 67% roughly of the fiscal year remaining. So that far right column is how you can use this document to look at variances different than 67% and ask questions about that. TJ, I'll find out about that bridge, at least the materials cost, and let me know just out of interest. I only bring the major funds with me, but you can always call or anything, and I can look it up for you. Couple things to note. We did get an email from Billy McBride last week requesting that our ad valorem packet be turned into him by July 30th. That's a little bit earlier than we usually tackle it. So I'll be placing the public hearing notices in the newspaper in the next couple of weeks that will just allow you the option to roll the millages forward at the right time. So when you see those ads come out, it does not reflect that any decision has been made. It just follows the chronology of events that have to happen to allow you the opportunity to roll the millages forward. So what that will look like will be an agenda item on the June jury meeting to announce the public hearing, and then in July, we would need to consider the millage rates and levy the millages to get it to Billy by July the 30th.
But he is gonna hold it open for the library.
Yes, sir, he is. That would be for everything other than the library, which we would handle separately after the election in October. I just don't know if we want to hold everything until October. Let's just go ahead and get him everything else. I kind of felt like. We received a severance tax check last week in the amount, I should let Kevin say this because he was so excited when he brought it to me. And I was excited too. Severance tax check in the amount of $403,363 last week. Based on that amount and based on my conversations with Holly, we stand to surpass $1.2 million in severance tax revenue for 2021. Just for reference, the budget reflects an amount of $394,000, so we've already surpassed our budget for the year. And I recommend we don't add that back into the budget as an amendment until we receive the other two severance tax payments for the year. Sales tax collected during the month of March was $788,075. That's a huge number. For comparison, sales tax collected for the month of March 2020 was $557,000 and change. That's a 40% increase compared to the same month last year. I think online retailers are starting to try to implement and comply with whatever is coming next as far as sales tax collection for us, for Louisiana. That's my report.
Okay, any questions? Any comments?
Laura, did you say that was February month on month or year on year?
That's March. That was collected during March, which is an odd month to collect a high amount anyway. You know, it's not like a holiday, it's not like school is changing over, it's just, that's really shocking in a good way, I think.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, department reports.
Okay, Mr. Doss?
Within the last month, tractor crew there in the Chandler Road area, we've been doing a lot of patching. We got the request for the town of Grambling and also the town of Shooter. We got those requests completed this past week.
And y'all about to start on roads here pretty quick.
Yeah, if it quit raining.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Chandler Road, immediately before the interstate and immediately after, depending on either way you're going.
State maintenance.
They are two horrible holes.
I've called the state on them and a while back, and I guess they put a little bit in there. But yeah, there's so many feet on each side of the interstate.
Yeah.
That's the state.
I get a lot of calls in my district from that, and I keep saying, call the state, DOTD.
Skip, I reached out this week to Jeff at the state. Skip, I reached out to Jeff. I hadn't heard back from him, but I reached out to him this morning on that very thing.
Thank you.
Yes.
We share that.
All right. Mr. Allen?
No report, any questions?
And our extra truck, we're staying caught up at the landfill. I do want to make a comment while Mr. Atlas is standing though. He and Nature have been doing some DEQ mandated training by Zoom, and DEQ used our transfer station as a model transfer station on statewide training, and so I want to give credit for that. Anyone else? Do anybody else that needs to make a report? Maurice, we good? Okay. I'm not your partner yet.
Ms. Charlie?
We are on point, on set for this Saturday for the first annual Lincoln Parish Park Festival. And for those of you who do not know, I had an amazing team: Glenn Scriber, Doug, James Ramsor, Tim Copeland, Rick Godley, and a lady named Greta McCullen. And I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all the hard work that you guys put into it to help to put this into play. And I expect to see everybody's face out there Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strauber, for all her work. It's going to be excellent.
Okay.
Remind me the hours.
From 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
10 to 4.
Don't make me come get you.
10 to 4.
10 to 4.
I'm going to be neutering cow.
Moving right along.
All right, I'll be very quick here. Jurors, if you have not completed your Tier 3 personal financial disclosure statements with the state, those are due by May 15th. And I think there are a couple of folks that have not done that.
And your ethics training.
And your ethics training. If you need assistance with that, you can contact Devin in my office and she'll be glad to help you with that. But don't let that get past you. We've been contacted about hosting the Regional Police Jury Association meeting this fall, and so we'll start the planning of that in the near future. Just wanted to remind you that we are going to be the host this year since we didn't do it last year because of coronavirus.
Fun day.
They actually collect money from all the parishes, and we've already received our money.
Okay.
We get a check this week, so it will be deposited, and then I'll be asking you all to go out and solicit prizes in the near future. So we'll have that discussion soon.
Many of us have been to those over the years, and boy, they put on the dog.
I know, y'all gonna have to help me put on the dog.
Yeah, we've had it here a couple of times.
Yes, so.
So when is that?
And I believe it's,
We don't have a date yet because we have to sign, you could do that possible.
If we get that and can put Miss Annette Straughter, the dog will be put on. Hey,
that's
good law.
And then finally, I just want to state that our enterprise fleet vehicles have started to arrive and are being put out. I think we have 9 that, is that right, Kevin? 9 that have been brought in, safety equipment and add-ons have been added on. They've been, the new logos have been put on the side and they're being issued out to employees. So you'll be seeing that else on the road, and I think they look really, really nice, and I think they reflect you and the work you do very well. So we appreciate that, and I hope that. And if you want to see Kevin's trucks out front, so you can see that. So that's all from our report.
Well, police jury convention starts tomorrow, and
Yes.
those that are going.
Yes, and Kevin has given them all their packets, and I believe that's Mr. Melton, Mr. Hunt, Ms. Straughter, and Kevin will be going, and I think Laura will be joining y'all later in the week.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Other business, NACO, did you want to?
Yes. Last meeting, you approved travel for NACO. There has been a change by NACO. They have changed both the location and the date. Don't know what has precipitated this. It may have something to do with coronavirus. Everything else does. It has been moved from Austin, Texas to Prince George's County, Maryland, and which should significantly increase the travel cost, and it will now be July 9th through the 12th. Your motion last time was to approve it pending available funding for jury travel, and we just need to approve this change pending available funding for jury travel.
So I hear a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Swat seconded.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Any other comments? Okay, any public comments? Anybody want to make public comments on anything? this point? If not, the meeting is adjourned.